My beloved child, stop just for a moment. I need you to pause because I need your attention right now, not later. This is not a random message you can just scroll past. This is an interruption of love, a divine appointment. There is a stillness in your spirit, and I am speaking directly into it. This is the moment I have been waiting for. A moment I ordained for you before you took your first breath. This is the moment I can finally open my heart to yours and show you the answers you have been weeping for. The truths your soul has been aching to know. You have been wondering, do you hear me? Do you see me? You've asked if I was watching when it felt like your entire world was falling apart at the seams. You've wondered if I noticed that heavy weight you've been carrying, the one you hide so well from everyone else. My beloved, yes, I saw all of it. I heard every unspoken cry. I was with you in every single second you were convinced you were alone. But I had to wait. I had to wait for this exact moment, the moment when you would be ready to truly hear this. Not just with your ears, but with the deepest part of your soul. And that moment is now. This hour is not an accident. It is divine timing. I have held back words that would have been too much for you before. I have remained quiet while your heart was screaming. Not because I am cruel, but because I am kind. If I had spoken sooner, you might have settled for a simple answer when I was preparing to show you something eternal. Child, I need you to understand this. My silence was not abandonment. It was precision. I didn't speak because I was busy weaving your circumstances together behind the scenes. I was crafting a new reality for you. One strong enough to hold the weight of the glorious future I have planned. And now, I'm breaking that silence. I am stepping out from behind the curtain with all of heaven watching, and I am telling you, you must listen to me right now. There is no more time to delay. What I am about to reveal will shift everything. You thought I was finished, but I am just beginning. You assumed it was over, but that was only the setup. You questioned your own value, but my love for you has never wavered. There were things you walked through that made no sense. Doors that slammed in your face just when you needed them to open. Prayers that felt like they just bounced back, leaving you in an echo chamber of your own pain. I was there. I was right in the middle of it all, whispering, not yet. Why? Because I loved you too much to say yes to what wasn't ready. I loved you too much to give you a blessing that wasn't fully formed. And now I say, I am ready. I am ready to show you what I have been hiding. Not to punish you, but to protect what is sacred and precious. I am ready to unfold the beautiful, intricate layers of my plan for you. And it is so much greater than what you asked for. It is so much deeper than what you could have ever imagined. I'm not telling you this casually. I'm telling you this with urgency. Your soul is entering a moment of divine interruption. Everything that has been hanging in the balance, every almost, every what if, every maybe later, all of it is being shattered right now. This is the hour of your release, and you need to be present for it. You need to stand still and stop the cycle of doubting. I did not bring you all this way to abandon you at the edge of your breakthrough. You are standing on the tipping point of something holy. And if you blink, if you doubt, if you turn away, you might miss the very thing you've been crying for. That's why I had to speak now. I couldn't wait another minute. Heaven couldn't wait. The angels assigned to your life couldn't wait. The blessings that have your name on them couldn't be held back any longer. I am telling you everything, not just pieces, not fragments. the whole truth. And the truth is this: I have never left you. I have never changed my mind about you. I have never stopped preparing a place for your promise to land safely. I have come now to break the silence, so that you will never again have to wonder where I am. Because I am here, closer than your next breath. And what I am about to do in your life will make up for every single moment you thought I was gone. I know that stillness. I know it felt endless, like it wrapped around your days and turned into a void you never asked for. But child, what you mistook as me going quiet was actually me going deeper. While your mind was racing with 1,000 questions, I was forming answers beneath the surface of your understanding. I was refining the roots of your faith, the parts you didn't even know were exposed. I needed you to sit in that silence because it was the only space where the noise of the world wouldn't steal the sacred work I was doing. You didn't miss me. You just met me in a different way. I concealed my presence, not to push you away, but to pull you into a dimension of trust that can only grow when sight is gone. A faith that has to rise up all on its own. You see, in the quiet, I was building the foundation that your entire future will stand on. If I had interrupted that work too early, the whole structure would have cracked under the pressure of the weight that is coming. So I waited. I watched you wrestle. I heard every sigh you thought no one heard, and I responded by strengthening what was fragile inside of you. You mistook the pause for punishment. But all along, I was creating an inner sanctuary in your heart, a place that cannot be shaken by any outer storm. Not a single second was wasted. Even in the darkness, I was orchestrating encounters, aligning divine timings, and making preparations that your natural eyes could never have traced. What looked like a delay was actually a divine rehearsal. Every quiet moment was layered with meaning, and though it seemed like I wasn't moving, I was anchoring your purpose with threads only I could weave. You felt forgotten, but in heaven's ledger, you were on the front line of a total transformation. I allowed the silence to thicken, not to hurt you, but to insulate you, to protect you from the voices that would have watered down what I was maturing in your spirit. This wasn't a timeout. It was a sacred, set-apart season where I was breaking old attachments, burning away impurities, and rewriting the parts of your story that needed new ink. I know it stretched your endurance. I know your heart cried out for volume, for a sign, for any confirmation that you weren't alone. But I had to hide the blueprint until your hands were strong enough to hold it. And now, they are. That is why I am speaking with such urgency. I'm not just delivering a message. I am restoring what the silence prepared you to receive. The weight you felt was not to harm you. It was to make sure that what you carry next will never be stolen from you. There is no need to mourn what felt wasted. It has all been preserved for this unveiling. You have been equipped in a way that cannot be undone. You have been stretched past your old fears. You have been taught by the stillness. You have been molded in the shadows. And now the silence ends. Not because I grew tired of watching you wait, but because what I have stored inside you is finally, fully ready to meet its assignment. This moment is not accidental. It's not just emotional. It's not stirred by a fleeting feeling. This is a divine unlocking. A precise unraveling of what I buried in your depths for this very hour. The silence was necessary to ensure that when I finally spoke again, your heart wouldn't resist. And now you're listening. Not from a place of frustration, but from a place of surrender. You're not just hearing me, you're ready to obey without needing all the explanations. That is what I was shaping in the silence. A heart that follows me without demanding to see the full path first. I trust you now with more. You have passed tests you didn't even know were tests. You have walked through fire and refused to become bitter. You have prayed with dry lips, and still you lifted your hands. That's why I'm breaking the silence. Not because you forced my hand, but because you proved your posture. You are not the same person who entered that quiet season. You are stronger, you are holier, you are sharper, you are quieter in your crying, and louder in your surrender. Now I don't have to hold back anymore. The season of silence has accomplished exactly what it was sent for. And what I am about to release in your life will make that silence feel like the gentle, held breath right before the storm of my glory descends. I need you to understand something sacred. Even the moments you thought dissolved into thin air, the ones you thought had no witness, they were seen. They were seen with infinite detail. Each tear that left your eyes was not lost in the dust of your suffering. I caught every single one, not as water, but as a testimony. They weren't discarded. They were gathered with reverence. You did not cry in vain. Your sobs were louder in heaven than you could ever imagine. Every groan, every whisper you thought faded into the night. It echoed in my throne room with power and with weight. I didn't miss the nights your pillow was soaked with exhaustion. I didn't overlook your trembling hands as you tried to hold your own heart together while your world frayed at the edges. When no one else checked on you, I was documenting your endurance. I wrote it down, not as a record of your pain, but as a testament to your faith in motion. You thought the breaking went ignored. But child, I was closer to you in your agony than I ever was in your laughter. It was in your ache that my presence wrapped around you the tightest. You didn't feel me, I know. The sorrow was screaming louder than my peace. But I didn't move an inch. I sat beside you as you fell apart, holding the fragments even when you didn't know you were crumbling. Those moments shaped eternity more than your victories ever could. The heavens stood in stillness when your soul whispered help with no words. Your breathing, even shallow with despair, was music to me, because you were still choosing to remain. That choice meant more to me than shouted praises. The decision to not give up, even when it looked messy and uncertain, was a declaration of your trust. You didn't need to be perfect to please me. You didn't have to smile through the storm to earn my closeness. What drew me near wasn't your strength. It was your raw honesty, your fragile hope, your refusal to stop believing even when belief itself hurt. I kept a record, not to shame you, but to honor you. Your pain has become intercession. Your wounds now speak louder than your words. The realm you couldn't see has shifted because of what you carried in secret. You held so much with no spotlight, and that is what moved my heart. That is what qualified you for what I am about to give. The way you walked through humiliation, through disappointment, through abandonment, it did not go uncounted. I was writing it all down, not just for remembrance, but for restoration. You will see repayment, but not in the way the world expects. I'm not just replacing what you lost. I am returning it, multiplied, with the fragrance of heaven all over it. You will see why the tears flowed in private. You will witness the reason the weeping didn't stop when others had already moved on. I was cleansing you. I was pulling out roots you didn't even know were choking your joy. I was healing you through the release of your sorrow. You didn't realize it then, but every time you cried, you gave me permission to touch the places you had buried. You let me in deeper each time, until there was nothing left but your soul exposed. And that is where I rebuilt you. Right there, in the tear-soaked ground of your surrender, not a moment went unseen. No suffering was wasted. Nothing slipped through unnoticed. I watched. I listened. I stayed. Even when you assumed I had left, I was leaning in closer. That's how I knew you were ready. Not when you were shouting praises from the mountaintop, but when you whispered, "I trust you," from the pit of despair. That's when I wrote your name into my divine timing. That's when I circled this very date for your divine interruption. And now, as I speak to you here, I carry with me the full weight of every sob, every breakdown, every silent stare into the ceiling when you didn't know what else to say. This moment is drenched in those memories, not to haunt you, but to crown you. You are not emerging from this pain empty-handed. You are rising with a history written in heaven. Your tears gave birth to your territory. Your suffering became the seed, and now the harvest is in motion. Because your cries mattered more than you ever knew. There's something you didn't realize while you were waiting. The delay wasn't punishment, it was purification. You assumed the stillness meant I was ignoring you. But truly, I was cleansing your path. There were voices speaking into your spirit that didn't belong there. Opinions masquerading as wisdom. Distractions cloaked as opportunities. Advice that sounded right but was steering you off course. The waiting didn't dull your progress. It was shielding you from premature exposure. I needed the echoes around you to fade so the resonance of my whisper would finally take root. You didn't need more answers. You needed less interference. I stripped away the opinions you clung to because they were drowning out my direction. When I held back the next step, I wasn't denying you access. I was eliminating distortion. You were surrounded by so many different signals, each pulling you in directions I never authored. That confusion wasn't your fault, but it had to be addressed. And so, I paused everything. I paused the momentum. Relationships, even doors you thought were blessings. Not because you were unworthy, but because you were about to build something sacred on shaky foundations. I didn't want you to construct your identity from noise. I longed for your spirit to recalibrate to my frequency. When your heart beats in rhythm with mine, then every decision becomes alignment, not an accident. That's why the delay felt like a loss. It was actually a holy filtration. I wasn't taking from you. I was making space for what was truly from me. If I hadn't intervened, you might have followed momentum instead of your mission. I care too deeply for you to let excitement become your compass. I don't operate on speed. I move in significance. And this season, though it looked like standing still, was filled with invisible progress. I was removing clutter from your soul. I was detoxing your desires. I was refining your definition of success. I wanted you to want me more than you wanted movement. And you did. Even when it hurt, you remained. Even when the silence became suffocating, you kept turning back to me, asking not for shortcuts, but for clarity. That's what drew me closer. Not your strength, but your surrender. You could have forced doors open. You could have filled the empty space with substitutes. But you didn't. You waited. And in that waiting, your ears began to shift. You stopped listening for what would comfort your emotions and started leaning in for what would awaken your assignment. You stopped craving noise and started desiring truth. That is what the delay was all about. Not to make you suffer, but to make you sensitive. Sensitive to my voice, to my nudges, to my leading. I wasn't trying to confuse you. I was removing the counterfeit so the real could finally be recognized. And now, because your ears have been cleared and your heart has been emptied of what never belonged, I can speak without competition. I don't have to compete for your focus anymore. Your attention has been recentered, and now when I speak, I know you'll respond. Not from fear, but from trust. This is what I waited for. Not just your availability, but your full attention. Not your busyness trying to earn blessings, but your stillness where you realized you already have my affection. The delay wasn't a detour. It was the setup for a straight path. You were never forgotten. You were being refined for clarity. I was silencing the surroundings so the symphony I've composed for your destiny could finally be heard in its fullness. And now, as you stand here with quieted thoughts and an awakened soul, the sound of my voice will no longer be buried beneath the chaos. It will be distinct. It will be sharp. It will be unavoidable. Because now, after all the stillness, all the release, all the surrender, your spirit is finally in tune with heaven's intention. And that was the point of every delay. Not to stop you, but to teach you how to truly hear me when everything else fades away. This very moment has been etched into eternity long before you ever stepped into it. It carries more weight than you know, and you are not standing here by chance. This hour was not given to the calendar like all the rest. It was carved with intention, sealed with destiny, and filled with revelation you were never supposed to receive before now. There were reasons I withheld certain insights, not because I wanted to confuse you, but because the timing had to be perfectly aligned with what your heart could finally carry, without collapsing under the responsibility. You see, divine insight is not entertainment. It's not just information to collect. It is transformation to obey. And what I am opening before you right now will change how you walk, how you see, how you decide, and how you believe. This isn't simply guidance. It's a holy unveiling. I am showing you what was once veiled because the preparation is complete. The conditions in your spirit have finally matured. The hidden chambers of your understanding are now ready to host the fullness of what I am about to speak. Heaven is standing still as I release mysteries into your soul that you couldn't have decoded before. That's why the past seasons were so intense. They weren't punishment. They were the process of enlarging your capacity to hold this magnitude of light. I wasn't keeping you in the dark. I was ensuring that when I finally opened the window, your eyes wouldn't burn, but would be able to adjust. I was waiting for you to become aware, not just curious. Because once something is revealed, it carries accountability. And now you are ready for what others aren't even looking for. I've waited until this moment. Not because you were late, but because everything surrounding your life had to synchronize for what's about to come next. Even the struggles, even the delays, even the betrayals, they were all aligning you for this sacred disclosure. Today is not an average day. It is heavy with divine weight. There are certain things I will only release during moments that are drenched in surrender and reverence. And this is one of them. You've reached a threshold. You've stepped into a portal of spiritual awareness that few ever recognize while they are in it. But I am telling you now, heaven is leaning low. The angels are recording, and my spirit is breathing words you must receive without filters. The truth I'm unveiling may not match your assumptions, It may even confront what you thought I would never do. But trust me, what I reveal is pure. What I uncover is necessary, and what I give will not be removed once it is spoken. This isn't temporary insight. This is a permanent anointing. I am handing you divine intelligence, not so you can boast, but so you can build. I am not entertaining your mind. I am commissioning your spirit. This moment is sacred because it closes a chapter of confusion and opens one of clarity. The fog you once lived in is lifting. The clouded lens you viewed your purpose through is being shattered. Now you will begin to understand why things never worked out the way you hoped. You'll discern what was me and what was just noise. You'll separate the truth from the convenient. I am not giving you more for the sake of knowledge. I am entrusting you with revelation so that you can finally move forward without questioning every single step. This is your release into knowing, not guessing. And what you do with what I reveal today will shape the future I have been preparing behind the scenes. This is the moment I open the curtain. This is where secrets once kept hidden are handed to you like keys. Do not take this lightly. This hour is holy. This isn't the day to run back into your old habits of hesitation. This is the hour to step in, eyes wide, heart open, hands ready. Because what I am about to release will not only shift your life, it will awaken purpose in others who are connected to your obedience. And all of this begins now, not tomorrow, not next season. Because heaven has spoken and the door has already begun to swing open before you. You were asking for explanations when I was still constructing the outcome. Had I handed you that understanding too soon, you would have sprinted toward a promise that wasn't fully formed. I saw how desperate you were to break free from the uncertainty. I saw how ready you felt to handle the weight of insight. But child, you didn't recognize what was still fragile beneath the surface. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. Some things I concealed were never withheld out of cruelty. They were tucked away because their timing mattered more than your immediate clarity. If I had revealed the full picture too early, it would have tempted you to move ahead of my pace, to operate in your own strength, to grasp for what should have been received. I knew that once you saw too much too soon, you'd start arranging your life around something that was only meant to emerge in a later season. And so I guarded what you weren't yet prepared to steward. I sheltered you from knowledge that required a deeper maturity to manage. You didn't fail me by asking. I welcomed your questions, but I loved you too much to answer in a way that would damage you before your destiny could deliver the fullness of my plan. There were moments you cried out, demanding clarity, begging for direction, yearning for the bigger picture. And all I could give you was stillness, because the clarity you longed for would have shifted your focus away from me and onto the outcomes. You would have started chasing the vision instead of trusting the process. I didn't want you building your hope on something you only partially understood. That's why I hid it. Not to frustrate you, but to safeguard what was forming in silence. You don't realize how much I protected you by keeping certain revelations sealed until this exact moment. What I hid was sacred. It was growing. It needed isolation, not exposure. And now, because your character has deepened and your trust has been refined, I am beginning to uncover what was stored away in divine wrapping. You are finally standing in the right posture to handle what I once had to keep from your view. You're no longer chasing answers just to escape discomfort. Now you desire revelation only to walk in deeper obedience. That shift is what unlocked this release. You proved through your patience that you would honor what I say, even without full comprehension. That was the turning point. That's what made it safe for me to begin showing you more. I wasn't silent because I lacked compassion. I was silent because what I had to say needed the right soil to land in. Your roots were still stretching. Your discernment was still awakening. And now, because the foundation has been laid through fire, pressure, and surrender, I can bring into the light what I once kept behind the veil. It's not that I changed, it's that you grew. And now that your vision won't lead you astray, I can entrust you with insight that will not only clarify your next steps, but expose every lie that once disguised itself as truth. You will begin to see through what used to deceive you. You will discern what once confused you, and you will walk with confidence where you used to hesitate. I protected you not just from the enemy, I protected you from premature movement. I covered your eyes until your heart could remain steadfast, even when the picture was blurry. That is love, child. Not indulgence, but wisdom. I never tease my children with glimpses of glory they cannot yet carry. But now I'm peeling back what was layered. I'm unfolding the scroll that was once sealed. Not because I must, but because I long to share with you what I've kept hidden out of mercy. This is the reward of your endurance, that now you won't just hear me, you'll understand what you're being called into, and you won't run ahead, you'll walk with me, in pace, in step, in intimacy, because now you're not just interested in the destination, you're invested in the journey with me. And that is when I reveal the truth that once waited in silence. There is no more room for hesitation. There is no more space for a fragmented belief. I require the entirety of your focus, undivided and undistracted, because what I'm revealing next cannot be received with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You have stood at the edge long enough, peering through the cracks, tasting glimpses, but never drinking fully. Questioning in the background while pretending to be sure on the surface. But child, that season ends here. The barrier that once dimmed your view is being pulled back, and with it comes a new responsibility. Not just to see, but to respond. You've asked for deeper clarity, for spiritual depth, for unmistakable direction, and I am giving it. But not to the version of you that's unsure if I'm enough. I'm calling for the version of you that chooses me with unwavering conviction, even when understanding is incomplete. I can no longer work through double-mindedness, because what I am placing in your hands requires precision, not indecision. You have walked far enough in pieces, heart partially yielded, thoughts partially surrendered, plans partially submitted. That posture cannot carry what I am about to place upon you. The lifting of the veil is not merely an invitation to view what's ahead. It is a call to come closer than you have ever dared, and closeness demands trust without conditions. I'm not asking you to feel ready. I'm asking you to let go of the idea that you must fully grasp everything before you obey completely. This next phase requires reflex obedience, a heart that moves the moment I speak, not after analysis or validation from others, because what I'm revealing is sacred, and I will not pour revelation into divided vessels. I am calling you away from the distractions that quietly steal your energy, I'm removing the false comforts that diluted your hunger from my presence. I'm shutting down the background noise you've grown numb to, not to punish you, but to reawaken your hearing. You've gotten used to my silence, but now my voice is returning with clarity. And I need your spirit to be tuned like an instrument, ready to receive without any filters. I'm doing something precise, not loud. This is not a spectacle. This is a sacred unveiling. And I will not compete with your idols of familiarity or your patterns of control. If you truly want to walk into this unveiling, you must release your grip on what used to feel safe. I know how you held on to those backup plans, just in case this path felt too risky, but there can be no backup plans now. This is the moment I require your heart to be all in. No delayed obedience, no reluctant faith, no calculations to keep yourself comfortable, just raw, unshakable surrender. I'm not asking this because I am demanding. I am asking because I am about to entrust you with revelation that will realign your entire course. I am handing you insight that carries generational weight. You won't just see your own life differently. You will see how your choices will ripple into the future of others I've tied to your obedience. That's why I need your eyes fixed on me without blinking, your ears open without straining, your hands stretched out without holding anything else. This level of revelation comes with new boundaries, deeper reverence, and sharper discernment. And you are ready, not because you feel brave, but because I have refined you through the very seasons you thought were breaking you. Those trials weren't meant to weaken you. They were stripping away the unnecessary, chiseling away hesitation, purifying your yes. And now here you are, standing at the place where the veil lifts, not to tease you, but to welcome you in. This is the turning point, where I reveal what was never meant to be hidden forever, only reserved for the moment when your spirit could fully handle it. So lean in, don't blink, don't flinch, don't delay. What I am about to speak will echo into dimensions you haven't walked through yet. But I can only go further if I have all of you. Not just the parts you're comfortable surrendering. Give me your full attention, because what's coming next will only make sense to the one who is truly listening with nothing held back. You've carried wounds that felt like abandonment, moments that pierced your confidence, doors that slammed shut right when your hopes were high, and you assumed it meant you weren't enough, or worse, that I had turned away. But what you didn't recognize in those painful pauses was my hand, gently shifting your direction to preserve the life I was calling you into. It didn't feel like mercy, I know. It felt like loss. It felt like betrayal. It felt like the kind of silence that leaves you questioning your own worth. But child, hear me now. I was not denying you access to something beautiful. I was saving you from walking into a place that would have drained you dry before you ever reached what was actually designed for you. That no wasn't cruelty. It was compassion. That closed opportunity wasn't missed. It was intercepted. I stood between you and the road you were about to take. Not because I didn't want you to progress, but because I knew what you couldn't see. There were snares dressed as blessings, illusions that mimicked answers, paths that looked promising but were laced with compromise. I disrupted your plans because I saw the end before you even took the first step. I allowed certain connections to dissolve so your spirit wouldn't be tied to people who couldn't steward your destiny. I rerouted you, not to delay your purpose, but to deepen your awareness of what is truly for you. Every time something vanished unexpectedly, I was performing surgery on your timeline, removing what looked alive but carried decay underneath. If I had allowed you to settle there, you would have built an identity around conditions that weren't sustainable. I couldn't let you crown situations as divine when they were rooted in deception. That's why I had to act quickly, sometimes even violently, pulling you away from what you thought you needed. You wrestled with it, wondering why things never settled the way you planned. But I was whispering, even in your frustration, trust me, this is not rejection, this is protection. I wasn't punishing you. I was preserving what you hadn't yet grown into. The plans you were chasing were too small for what I have written for you. You were about to shrink yourself to fit into something that didn't match your assignment. And I had to intervene before you adjusted to a life beneath your anointing. It broke your heart, I know, but it was either that temporary heartbreak or a lifetime of quiet compromise. I chose to wound your expectations for a moment so I could restore your foundation forever. You weren't denied. You were redirected. You weren't dismissed. You were delivered. That version of the story you mourn. It would have cost you too much if I had let you continue. It would have drained your identity, blurred your discernment, and silenced your voice. So I stepped in. I interrupted your momentum. I removed your comfort. I shook your stability. Not because I am harsh, but because I am holy. And holiness doesn't just give you what you ask for. It gives you what won't destroy you. That's what I did. I watched over you while you questioned me. I stood near while you mourned what I removed. I counted every sigh as you tried to understand why the pieces didn't come together. And now as you look back, you'll begin to notice the patterns. You'll see the traps you never fell into. You'll notice the disasters you bypassed. You'll realize that what didn't happen was just as miraculous as what did. I want you to hear this deep in your soul. You were never forgotten in the denial. You were being rescued. Even when you thought I had turned away, I was standing between you and the wreckage that tried to wear a disguise. And now that you've survived the reroute, now that you're still standing despite the ache, type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. I'm about to show you what I was leading you toward all along. You were spared, not stalled. And this new path, the one you never imagined, holds more life, more alignment, and more peace than everything you once begged me to restore. I am not bringing back what I blocked. I am unveiling what I prepared, and it begins right here, on the road that my mercy paved for your future. You spent too many nights replaying goodbyes that never made sense, trying to decipher a silence that arrived without warning, grieving connections that seemed stable but then vanished without reason. And I want you to know, child, you weren't abandoned. You were protected. What looked like desertion was actually my hand, repositioning you away from entanglements that would have diluted your purpose and stifled your growth. I saw what was forming beneath the surface while you were only focused on appearances. I watched motives shift behind smiling faces. I discerned the hidden intentions behind every word, every promise, every action that you believed was genuine. You saw friendship. I saw spiritual interference. You held on to loyalty. I identified idolatry. And while your heart mourned the departure, heaven celebrated the clearing of space for what was divinely aligned. I never designed you to carry relationships that compromised your discernment. I couldn't allow you to build your future around people who would eventually contaminate the purity of your calling. Their exit wasn't random. I orchestrated the departure before they could anchor you to something lesser than what I have written for your life. You saw them as necessary. I saw them as temporary. Some were never meant to stay beyond their season. Their presence was permitted only until they reached the edge of the path I carved exclusively for you. I knew the exact moment their influence would become a weight instead of a wind. I knew when their voices would begin to drown out my whisper. So I acted. I created the disconnect. I didn't need your permission to protect your soul. I separated what your heart tried to keep because I have seen the destination you haven't reached yet. If I had left you surrounded by those voices, you would have second-guessed the direction I am now commanding you to walk. Your need for their validation was starting to replace my confirmation. Their advice was beginning to compete with my instruction. And in my mercy, I didn't let it continue. I ended what you weren't ready to end. I closed the chapter before you even finished reading the last page. You felt betrayed. But what really happened was liberation. They weren't stolen from you. They were removed for your refinement. And though your tears were real and your confusion was deep, I want you to know this truth. Not everyone who starts with you is qualified to stay through the unveiling of who you are becoming. Some only had access to your past because they were never intended to witness your transformation. They couldn't see beyond who you used to be. They were comfortable with your limitations, but deeply uncomfortable with your potential. That's why I had to intervene. I separated you. Not because you are unlovable, but because your journey demanded isolation for recalibration. You needed space to grow without having to shrink yourself to remain relatable. I didn't want you adapting to environments I am about to call you out of. So I cleared the room. I allowed the distance. I created space, not for rejection, but for rebirth. And now you are lighter. You are clearer. You are stronger, not in spite of who left, but because of what their absence made room for. You're no longer dependent on approval. You're no longer anchored by attachment. You are free to hear me without interference. You are ready to walk without second-guessing every step. I know it still hurts sometimes, that ache for what used to feel familiar. But trust me, child, I never take without restoring. I never strip without rebuilding. And where there were once hands that dropped you, I am sending voices that will lift you, cover you, and walk beside you without competition. Relationships born in alignment, not obligation. Companions formed in covenant, not convenience. And these new alignments, they won't need an explanation. They will recognize your anointing without diminishing it. They'll honor your process without trying to edit your path. And when they arrive, you will no longer cry for what exited, because you will finally see why I had to clear the space for something holy to enter. This is not about loneliness, it's about alignment. You are not being isolated to be forgotten. You are being set apart to be entrusted. The pruning was preparation, the loss was positioning, and every absence I allowed has now become the doorway through which my presence will flood your life in ways you never imagined. You've called certain seasons setbacks, but I call them safeguards. You've labeled moments as wasted, yet I named them coverings. Child, what felt like unnecessary waiting was actually me, standing between you and consequences that would have derailed your destiny. You don't yet grasp how many hidden battles I fought on your behalf, how many collisions were avoided, how many plans of the enemy were diffused before they ever reached you. You were frustrated by the pace, but I was defending the promise. I slowed your steps, not because you were behind, but because timing in my kingdom isn't measured by speed. It's measured by alignment. And what you called a standstill was actually a divine pause, long enough for my intervention to finish its unseen work. I didn't forget you. I didn't leave you to wander. I was sheltering what I planted in you from climates that would have scorched it before the harvest. I refused to let you enter spaces where your soul would have bent under pressure you weren't yet equipped to withstand. I wasn't withholding progress. I was creating the conditions where you could thrive without compromise. Some environments were attractive to your natural eyes, but toxic to your spiritual formation. You wanted the opportunity. I saw the warfare attached to it. You prayed for the promotion. I discerned the manipulation hidden beneath it. You were ready to leap. I placed obstacles, not to stop you, but to redirect you toward what would sustain you instead of draining you. Every door that didn't open was an answer you didn't know you needed. Every halt in your plan was grace in disguise. Had I allowed your requests to be fulfilled on your terms, the very thing you celebrated would have eventually crushed you. So I stepped in. I held you back. I delayed the gratification, not to disappoint you, but to preserve you. I watched your impatience turn into discouragement. And even then, I remained near. While you doubted my presence, I was fiercely defending your future. I saw the unseen contracts being formed against your growth. I heard the conversations that happened without your knowledge. Strategies of darkness plotting distraction, detours lined with false affirmations, and I blocked every single one. My silence wasn't absence, it was warfare. My delays weren't refusals, they were detours away from destruction. I rerouted you through storms that looked like setbacks, only to shield you from floods that would have consumed you completely. And now, as you step into the aftermath of that preservation, I am revealing the magnitude of what I spared you from. You didn't just survive, you were hidden until the right alignment emerged. Not all progress is growth, not all advancement is favor. You needed to see that waiting isn't punishment when your path is being cleared. I didn't need your approval to protect you. I needed your willingness to trust what didn't make sense. And you did. Even when your mind questioned me, your spirit leaned toward me. That's why you're still here. Still positioned, still in motion. Because I saw everything and withheld what you weren't ready to carry. But now, the horizon is shifting. Now, what was paused is beginning to move. But this time, you're moving with discernment, not desperation. You're walking with clarity, not fear. The delays are ending, not because I changed my mind, but because what once waited has now matured. The timing is aligning. The place is prepared. The people assigned to your purpose are being drawn near. And you are stepping forward without any residue from what almost attached itself to you. You're entering this next phase without compromise, clinging to your steps. Because I held you back, you're walking into what's next with clean hands and a steady heart. So don't look back in regret. Don't rehearse what didn't happen. Rejoice. Because every slow season was me drawing a circle of safety around what I was building inside you. Nothing was lost. Nothing was missed. Everything was protected. And now you'll see why the delays were necessary. You are about to walk into rooms where your character can finally carry the weight of what I've been holding just beyond your reach. Not to torment you, but to keep it intact. Until you were truly ready. There were aches within you that language could never touch. Groanings your own heart didn't know how to decode. Longings buried under layers of survival and suppressed hope. And so I invited you into silence, not as isolation, but as an invitation. I quieted everything around you, not to distance myself, but to access the unspoken parts of you that had been hidden beneath a surface-level faith. I didn't need your words. I needed your surrender. I didn't ask for your speeches or declarations. I waited for the unraveling of what you didn't even know was festering underneath. And in the stillness, I began to uncover what distraction had kept numb. You tried to stay strong, to hold it all together, to mask the tension with productivity and noise. But I saw how exhausted your spirit truly was. I saw how long you had been performing peace while chaos raged beneath your ribs. I knew that if I didn't bring you into quietness, you'd continue functioning with unresolved pain. Pain that would eventually overflow into decisions not rooted in truth. So I stripped away the layers, slowly at first and then fully. Not to embarrass you, but to awaken you to what needed to be healed before you could handle what's next. The silence was my surgical room, a holy space where I operated on the deep, hidden places while the world continued at its own pace. I wasn't absent. I was present in a form you hadn't yet recognized. I was the breath between your anxious thoughts. I was the warmth in your stillness. I was the presence you couldn't see, but also couldn't ignore. And in that space, I reached into your memory, into your fears, into your identity, pulling out lies you had accepted as truth and wounds you had learned to decorate rather than release. The stillness gave me access. In motion, you would have missed me. In activity, you would have overruled the invitation. But in the pause, you encountered depths of me that don't reveal themselves to hurried hearts. You learned how to breathe again. You rediscovered how to listen, not just to my instruction, but to the whispers of your own soul that you had neglected for so long. You felt the weight of your unprocessed disappointment. You sat with emotions that had gone ignored for years. And though it was uncomfortable, it was also holy. You were being emptied, not to be left hollow, but to be filled with what carries eternal substance. You were being reset, not punished, but purified. I created space so you could hear the sound of your own need. Not to overwhelm you, but to meet you there with a comfort that doesn't just console, but transforms. You came face to face with parts of yourself that never felt safe to surface before. And instead of turning away, I held you closer. In the silence, I taught you that your value isn't based on your performance. In the quiet, I reminded you that you are seen, even when unseen by others. There was no applause, no spotlight, no audience. And yet I celebrated your every moment of truth. I watched your soul begin to breathe again. I watched shame lose its grip. I watched you stop striving to earn what I have always freely given. That's why the silence mattered. That's why I couldn't let the noise continue. You needed to break the habit of hiding. You needed to learn that stillness doesn't equal stagnation. It opens a doorway to restoration. And now, having journeyed through the hush of heaven, you carry a strength rooted in realness. You no longer fear what you feel. You no longer stuff away your sorrow in favor of an image. You are becoming whole. Not because you fixed everything, but because you allowed me to touch what no one else even knew existed. This is what intimacy with me truly looks like. Not noise, but nearness. Not activity, but awareness. Not volume, but vulnerability. And from this sacred place, I will now build something that can only rise from a heart that's no longer hiding its wounds. You met me in the silence, and now I will take you into places that can only be entered by the ones who have learned how to be still and truly listen. That ache you've tried to hide, the one that crept into your chest when no one was around, the one that made even breathing feel heavy. It wasn't wasted. Every moment your heart shattered beneath the weight of disappointment, loss, and unanswered prayers. I was there, not just comforting, but cultivating. I turned that cracked soil of your soul into a sacred field, a space where only I could plant what this world could never offer you. You thought that pain had no purpose. You believed healing meant forgetting. But I've been doing something deeper. I've been rebuilding you from underneath, using every broken piece as a container for fresh beginnings you didn't see coming. I never overlooked your sorrow. I used it. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. I didn't bypass your agony, I worked through it. You were expecting me to rescue you from it, but I chose to resurrect something within it instead. You see, heartbreak opens places in the spirit that ease and comfort can't reach. It makes you vulnerable to receive what pride might reject. It softens your resistance and makes room for revelation. In the depth of your pain, you created a space I could finally inhabit fully. Not the version of you that performs or pleases, but the raw, honest you. The you that doesn't pretend, doesn't edit, doesn't hide. That is the place I chose to plant something eternal. You were looking at the debris, but I was focused on the soil. What others saw as damage, I saw as readiness. And in that sacred vacancy where your dreams once stood, I began sowing things that wouldn't sprout right away. Not because they lacked life, but because the roots needed to go deep before the bloom. You were still grieving what ended, while I was nurturing what had only just begun. You kept asking me why you had to lose so much. I was asking you to trust me as I replaced what was never going to grow past where you were. What broke your heart was not designed to endure. What hurt you so deeply was not destined to remain. I didn't allow you to be torn open for nothing. That tear made room. And in that room, I whispered new assignments, fresh vision, a higher calling. You thought you were being emptied, but you were being tilled, turned over like soil before the season of rain. Even in your silence, you felt a flicker of me. That sense that something was holding you when nothing made sense. That was me, placing seeds while your tears watered the ground. It didn't look like growth. It felt like ruin. But the things of heaven don't follow the rhythms of the natural. I don't plant where there is comfort. I plant where surrender has broken open what comfort kept locked. You surrendered, even if you didn't realize it. Every time you said, I don't understand, but I'll keep walking, you handed me a new layer to work with. Every moment you chose to breathe through the ache instead of running from it. You showed me you were ready for something deeper than temporary relief. You were ready for transformation. You were ready to be made whole in ways you'd never imagined. I never rushed you through the grieving. I never shamed you for the collapse. I stayed with you. Patient, consistent, waiting for you to see that I was never far. And now, The roots have taken hold. The seeds have settled. The light is shifting. Soon, you will see something rise where you only saw ruin. The ground you thought was cursed will begin to reveal glory. The space that held your sorrow will now carry your strength. The very place you were broken will become the platform for beauty to erupt without apology. I'm not giving you back what was lost. I'm giving you something holy that only comes through what the world calls failure. This is the beginning of the unveiling. You are not the same person who entered the storm. And the harvest that's emerging will prove that I never waste anything. Not even a heartbreak when it's surrendered to me. I never misplaced you. I never overlooked you. The stillness you mistook for being passed over was actually divine concealment, not abandonment. You weren't cast aside. You were covered. I wrapped you in layers of divine mystery, not to hide you from blessing, but to preserve what I was building in you from forces that would have tampered with it too soon. Your process wasn't slow. It was sacred. There were places I didn't let you enter yet, not because you were incapable, but because the atmosphere couldn't yet handle the weight of who you were becoming. You've wondered why others were seen while you remained in the background. You've questioned why platforms were handed to those around you while you stood unnoticed. Watching, waiting, wondering if I even remembered the promises I whispered into your spirit long ago. But hear me now. Nothing I birth in secret is ever forgotten. I prepare those I intend to reveal with precision, and I protect them with divine silence. You weren't being delayed. You were being prepared to step into something you wouldn't have to strive to maintain. I didn't let certain eyes find you yet because I was still writing the parts of your story that would become the evidence of my power. Had I unveiled you earlier, they would have mistaken your anointing for personality, your wisdom for opinion, your depth for drama. But I needed them to encounter you after the fire, after the pruning, after the silence, after the stripping, after the rising. I needed them to witness the version of you who doesn't apologize for being chosen, who doesn't shrink when the spotlight finds you, who doesn't compromise truth to be accepted in spaces you're called to transform. And now, child, the moment of revelation draws near. What I once concealed is beginning to shine through. The mantle you carry has matured, and it can no longer be hidden beneath layers of invisibility. You are stepping into visibility, not to be admired, but to be positioned. I am not elevating you for applause. I am lifting you for an assignment. The stage is not for your ego. It is for the execution of your purpose. The unveiling isn't about your name. It's about what I have placed inside you. Finally finding expression in places where it will shift atmospheres. You were covered because exposure too early would have led to identity confusion. You would have started performing for acceptance instead of walking in authority. I wasn't keeping you small. I was keeping you pure. I needed you to trust me enough to be unseen without growing resentment. I needed your heart to stay soft, even when you were overlooked. And you did. You passed the test of hiddenness. You stayed faithful when there was no affirmation. You kept showing up, praying, growing, studying, surrendering, even when no one clapped, no one noticed, no one called your name. That obedience in the shadows is what made you trustworthy for what's coming next. I didn't need a spotlight to validate you. I needed your silence to shape you. Because now, when you speak, your words will carry a weight that isn't drawn from charisma, but from consecration. Now when you walk into a room, the fragrance of where you've been with me, will speak louder than any title ever could. The unveiling is not a moment, it's a mantle. It's not about being seen, it's about being recognized by the realm of influence I've assigned to you. They will know you, not because you introduce yourself, but because your very presence will confirm what their spirits have been waiting for. I've hidden you, not to punish you, but to prepare them, the ones you're about to impact. Timing matters to me. And I've waited until now so that both you and they are ready to meet in a moment that shifts everything. The veil is thinning, the doors are opening, the announcements will begin, not from platforms, but from divine connections. And when they come, you won't need to prove your worth. Your life will be the evidence. You were never forgotten. You were being reserved for a revelation only far. My timing could unveil. And that time is not far. It's beginning to unfold before your very eyes. You've mourned the breaking of things you tried so hard to hold together. You were confused by the crumbling of what seemed so necessary, disoriented by the sudden removal of what once looked stable. But hear me clearly now. What shattered wasn't destroyed by chaos. It was dismantled by design. I permitted the disintegration, not because you failed to maintain it, but because it lacked the capacity to sustain where I am taking you. Your calling was never meant to be supported by structures that bowed under pressure. I allowed those systems to collapse before they became your prisons. I allowed the support beams to give way before they created dependencies that would have blocked your movement. You tried to patch the holes, to rebuild what was cracking, to restore what was only meant to serve a temporary role in your process. But every time you reached out to repair it, I withheld the tools. Not to confuse you, but to reveal the truth. You were building your future on foundations that could not withstand the weight of your assignment. What felt like sudden endings were actually my mercy in disguise. I couldn't allow counterfeit strength to prop up your destiny. I had to show you what couldn't last. So you wouldn't mistakenly take it with you into places where it would have caused ruin. You questioned the timing. You even accused yourself of missteps, wondering if it was something you missed, some sign you didn't see. The child. It wasn't you. It was me. I removed what was posing as permanent so I could show you what is truly unshakable. I let the image of security collapse so you would stop placing your confidence in what could never carry the fullness of my plans. You needed to see the limits of man-made support. My child, are you wondering why some things had to break? I know you needed to feel what couldn't endure your growth. What I've placed inside of you, this divine purpose, it simply cannot be confined by structures that were never built with heaven's blueprint. I know you thought that relationship could walk with you forever, but it fractured under the gentle weight of truth. You believed that opportunity was your breakthrough, but it snapped under the pressure of integrity. You depended on a version of success that looked so promising, but it cracked because it didn't honor the sacred path I poured into your process. I want you to hear me. I didn't destroy what was yours. I was simply removing what was never going to protect what is mine in you. I wasn't trying to diminish your life. I was clearing the ruins so I could lay a foundation that isn't built on circumstances. One that isn't fragile. One that isn't influenced by applause or temporary favor. And now, after everything you saw break apart, you've learned to see the difference between what is merely glossy and what is holy. You no longer chase stability that comes from outside validation. You don't rely on titles or connections or platforms to define your direction. You've become grounded in a truth that doesn't shift with the seasons. That's why I had to break what couldn't carry you, so I could make you aware of what real strength looks like. And now I am building again, not on assumptions, not on fragile loyalties, not on the pressure to perform, but on the unshakable resolve you gained when everything else fell. I am constructing your next chapter from the resilience I shaped in your lowest place. I'm anchoring you to truths that were born in the silence and survived the storms. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of something that cannot be moved. You won't have to hold it up this time, my child. It will hold you. You won't exhaust yourself maintaining appearances. You'll finally rest in what is authentic. And when people look at your life, they won't just see what you carry. They'll see what you overcame without breaking. That testimony alone will be evidence that I was with you through every collapse, every disassembly, every moment you were left standing in the ashes. And from those ashes, I am now raising something eternal. So don't grieve what couldn't stay standing. Rejoice that I didn't let it deceive you any longer. You're being rebuilt, and this time, nothing will fall under the weight of your calling. I know this has left you with questions. You have wrestled silently, haven't you? Trying to balance your reverence with your confusion, your loyalty with a deep, longing ache, asking why I remained so quiet while your world shifted. I've seen you praying through clenched questions, holding back emotions you weren't sure were allowed in my presence. You told me you trusted me, but I felt the tremble in your voice when things didn't align, when the timeline stretched beyond what you could endure. And child, I was never offended by your questions. I cherish your honesty more than your perfection. I didn't withdraw because you doubted. I waited. I waited for the moment you'd be still enough to receive an answer that would anchor you, not just satisfy you for a moment. I didn't want to give you surface-level comfort. I wanted to release a revelation that would shift your entire perspective. And this is that moment. I'm answering you now. You've asked me why the pain lasted so long, why the breakthrough seemed to flirt with your faith but never landed. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. You wanted to understand why it looked like I was blessing others while your hands remained empty. And the answer, beloved, is this. I wasn't punishing you. I was building something rare within you. I wasn't withholding love. I was increasing your capacity. You were never forgotten, never dismissed, never overlooked. You were handpicked to carry a depth of spiritual awareness that could only be formed by enduring without explanations. That ache you carried wasn't because I was distant. It was because I was forming in you the ability to recognize me beyond your circumstances. I needed you to hear me even when there was no noise. I needed you to believe me without the need for constant evidence. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. And now, because you chose to remain, even with unanswered questions, I can speak clearly. Not a single moment of your confusion was wasted. Not one cry was dismissed. You weren't rebelling when you asked me why. You were reaching. And now, I'm showing you what I was doing behind the veil. I was orchestrating, I was aligning pieces that had to be perfectly placed so that when the release came, it wouldn't just feel good. It would last. I couldn't give you premature clarity because premature understanding would have led to premature movement, and that could have sabotaged everything I was preparing. You needed to stay rooted long enough to receive not just instruction but impartation. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm giving you the ability to see what you couldn't see before. This is clarity born from communion, not convenience. I'm clearing the fog. You won't be swayed anymore by voices that don't carry my breath. You asked for answers, and I'm giving you alignment. You asked for insight, and I'm giving you wisdom. You asked for direction, and I'm giving you identity. This clarity will not fade. It will ground you. You're not who you were when you first questioned me. And that's why this answer is more than words. It's a divine recalibration. I know you've been staring at the clock, measuring your hope by moments slipping through your hands, wondering if I saw how tightly you held on while the rest of the world moved forward. You've watched time become a weight instead of a witness, and every unanswered moment added a layer of weariness to your soul. But child, I have not been pacing according to your calendar. My timing was never bound by human design. I was never behind. I was never distant. I was deliberate. And now, I have stepped into this exact moment. You feared it was too late. You assumed the expiration date had passed on certain promises. But I need you to hear me. Nothing that belongs to you has been lost. What seemed unreachable has not vanished. It has been preserved, held in perfect timing for such a time as this. I didn't rush because what I'm releasing couldn't afford to arrive prematurely. I've been watching over every seed you planted in faith. I saw you press through disappointment. I saw you resist bitterness with a hope stretched thinner than breath. And while you questioned whether I had missed your moment, I was holding the miracle until the exact second when receiving it would not crush you, but complete you. Timing in my kingdom is not reaction, it's orchestration. I was preparing not just what you were waiting for, I was preparing you to carry it. If I had shown up according to your preferred timeline, your hands might have gripped what I'm giving out of fear instead of faith. But now, your hands are open. Not out of exhaustion, but from surrender. I'm not just here to hand you something. I'm here to redeem what you believed was permanently broken. I'm stepping into the timeline the enemy told you was wasted and rewriting what you assumed was irreparable. I am restoring opportunities and connections, not with replicas, but with upgraded manifestations that prove I never operate in panic. I am precise. I am intentional. My word over your life does not expire. I've timed this moment, this exact hour, not to give you back what you lost, but to introduce you to what I've been preparing while you waited. You'll begin to see things unfold quickly now. Not because I'm rushing, but because everything has finally aligned. The season is ripe. What you thought was over is being reignited. But this time, it won't require striving. You'll walk into it without resistance. You'll receive it without guilt, because you waited, because you trusted. I am not late, beloved. I am on time. Your waiting was never wasted. It was the exact path I used to bring you into this divine intersection of timing and promise. And I know about that hope. The one you tried to walk away from, didn't you? The one you wrapped your prayers around night after night until disappointment convinced you to bury it deeper than even your own memory could reach. You believed it was over, You convinced yourself it was safer to forget than to hope again. But I never agreed with your conclusion. What you covered with sorrow, I covered with promise. What you considered dead, I marked for revival. You didn't abandon it because you didn't care. You laid it down because it hurt too much to keep expecting. But child, hear me clearly. I was never done. I allowed that dream to go underground, not to be erased, but to be refined, hidden like a seed, not lost like a failure. You walked away, but I remained. You wept over it, but I watched over it. And now, in the very place you laid it to rest, I am sending the breath of life. It's beginning to stir again. Not because you forced it, but because I've declared it is time. You no longer have to strain to revive it. This isn't your burden. This is my moment to unveil. You will recognize it not by its familiarity, but by the peace it now carries. It won't look like the version you once dreamed. It will be better. You once begged for it in tears. Now you will walk into it with quiet confidence. I needed you to let go so I could take over. And now I'm returning it to you, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of my promise. That's me whispering. Look again. It's coming back to life. This is not just about the return of a dream. It's about the resurrection of everything within you that believed joy was no longer possible. Watch what I'm lifting from what you left behind. This is more than recovery. It's rebirth, and it begins now. I know it was hard. You watched as others appeared to accelerate, celebrating victories, moving from moment to moment, while you sat in what felt like stillness, wrapped in delay. You wondered if you'd missed something vital. If somewhere along the way you had taken a wrong turn. But child, I need you to know this. You didn't miss your moment. Time has not betrayed you. What you called delay was actually me pulling you into a different rhythm, one not ruled by clocks, but by covenant. While the world measured success by speed, I was shaping something timeless inside you. You saw years passing and called them wasted. I saw years of sowing and called them protected. You didn't fall behind. I lifted you out of patterns that would have rushed you past what was sacred. I slowed your steps so you could learn how to walk in rhythm with eternity. This wasn't stagnation. It was sanctification. You weren't overlooked. You were being deeply rooted. I wasn't focused on getting you there fast. I was focused on getting you there whole. Your process wasn't punishment. It was me investing longevity into what I'm about to release through you. I saw you trust me when nothing was moving. I watched you remain when you felt forgotten. And every second you gave to me in what felt like a silent wilderness, I marked as holy. Not a single one will go unrewarded. I don't restore minutes, I redeem legacies. You don't need to make up for lost time. I am collapsing timelines in your favor. What took others decades will come to you swiftly because of the weight you now carry. And you carry that weight because you waited when quitting would have been easier. It's why I can trust you with what's next. It is not too late. You are not behind. You haven't failed. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. And what's coming isn't compensation. It's a culmination. The world will wonder how it happened so quickly. But you will know. It happened faithfully. Your time was never stolen. It was safeguarded. I know you've exhausted your thoughts trying to piece it all together. Trying to piece together what I've already promised to reveal. You've turned questions into burdens, overanalyzed signs that were never meant to be solved, and wrestled with outcomes I never asked you to control. But child, that's not faith. That's fear dressed in logic. I never called you to carry the weight of understanding what I've already mapped out. I didn't place the responsibility of the results in your hands. I asked for your agreement, not your strategy. You don't have to figure out how I'm going to do it. You just have to stop blocking what I am doing by demanding to understand it first. The unknown has never been a threat to me. It's where I do my most creative work. You've been trying to read the future like a script, hoping to shield yourself from disappointment. But I haven't called you to safety. I've called you to surrender. And surrender isn't passive. It's powerful. It's the act of saying, even if I don't see the full path, I'll keep moving because you're the one leading me. Let go of needing to know everything right now. If you had all the answers, you'd never lean into me. You weren't meant to solve the journey. You were designed to walk with the one who authored it. Stop trying to decode signs I've never sent. Come back to the simplicity of trust. I am your security, not your prediction. You've been standing in front of closed doors, wondering why they won't open, when I've been waiting for you to stop knocking and just turn around. What you were trying to force wasn't a failure. It was a redirection. Stop grieving what didn't move, and start recognizing the door I'm unlocking right now. You won't need to strive for this next part. It will flow. Not because you made it happen, but because you finally stopped resisting me in the name of understanding. I never said it would all make sense right away. I said I'd never leave you, and I haven't. Put down the tools you were never meant to carry, the timelines, the conditions, the formulas, and just follow. I'm not asking you to walk blindly. I'm asking you to walk anchored in who I am. That is the kind of trust that sees breakthrough. I know this is hard because you have pleaded with such sincerity. You fasted with discipline, you interceded with passion, and still the reply never came. Not in the way you hoped. You waited, and your expectation turned to confusion. You asked me in the quiet hours, why haven't you responded? My child, I need you to hear me. I didn't ignore your cry. I simply refused to give you less than what I had prepared. What you asked for was not wrong. It was simply incomplete. You prayed from your present perspective, but I was looking at the entire landscape of your future. I could not give you what would have satisfied you temporarily, but left you empty in the end. There were doors you asked me to open that would have trapped you in places too small for your calling. There were relationships you begged me to mend that would have continued to drain your purpose. I didn't deny you. I upgraded your destiny. You asked me to bring comfort, but I was preparing to pour restoration. You asked me to protect what was breaking, but I was writing a better beginning you couldn't see yet. Sometimes the greatest mercy I give is in what I withhold. And the greatest protection is found in the delay that blocks a disaster. You only saw a fraction. I held the blueprint. I wasn't being cruel. I was being faithful to a vision much bigger than your request. And now you're about to witness the fruit of that faithfulness. The unanswered prayers will become the cornerstone of your testimony. You'll see the wisdom in the silence. You'll be grateful for the times I did not give you what you begged for, because what I am delivering instead will carry a peace that cannot be manufactured. I don't just want you to be relieved, I want you to be transformed. My silence was never neglect. It was me securing something better, higher, and lasting. Your faith has not been wasted. It has been stored. And now it will return to you, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. I saw the way you interpreted that hardship. You saw it as a consequence, as if what you endured was repayment for mistakes or moments of weakness. I felt the weight of shame that tried to convince you that your suffering was evidence of my disappointment in you. But beloved, that lie was never from me. I never wound to shame. I never break to belittle. The pain you've walked through wasn't wrath. It was refinement. I wasn't angry with you. I was investing in you. You were not under judgment. You were under shaping. I was stretching you with purpose. What you called punishment was actually me digging out the shallow so I could plant the deep. I was preparing you to carry more than your current strength could hold. If I hadn't allowed that tension, you would have built your identity on surface-level stability instead of spirit-led surrender. I was maturing you. You don't prepare for a promise by skipping the process. Promotion in my kingdom comes through pruning, and pruning feels like loss. It feels like you're being stripped. But in truth, you're being cut back to bear fruit that remains. Your pain didn't disqualify you. It prepared you. It made room where pride used to live. It carved humility where fear once ruled. It deepened your empathy and sharpened your discernment. And now you no longer need an explanation to believe me. You've learned to lean on my presence. That's what I was forming all along. You've been refined, not rejected. You no longer serve me for outcomes. You serve me for my presence. And that is the heart I pour out favor upon. You've searched for me in words. You've waited for me in signs, straining your spirit to hear something audible while your world trembled. You equated my presence with explanation, thinking that if I were truly near, I would have interrupted the pain with answers. But child, I was never quiet. I was speaking in a language that didn't need sound. I was revealing myself through the very strength you didn't realize you were carrying. Every morning you rose when discouragement begged you to stay down. That was me. Every time you breathed through the tight spaces instead of running, I was there. Your endurance wasn't you surviving alone. It was my whisper moving through your resolve. I wasn't on the outside looking in. I was within you, expanding your capacity to continue. You expected me to arrive with a rescue, but I arrived as your endurance. I didn't stop the waves. I made you unsinkable. You were looking for an escape. I was forming endurance. You wanted me to lift the weight. I was teaching your soul how to carry it with me. The reason you didn't collapse was not because you figured it all out. It was because I never stopped upholding you. And now you're realizing something. Your ability to remain. That wasn't your strength. That was me. That's how I often speak. Not through sound, but through shaping. You thought the silence meant distance, but in reality, it was the closeness that required no performance. And from this moment forward, you'll interpret silence differently. It won't scare you anymore. It will remind you of how I walked you through the valley when your strength ran out. You will remember that even without a single word, my love was louder than all the noise. Your endurance wasn't accidental. It was evidence. I was talking the entire time. You thought some of those seasons were just survival mode, that you were barely holding on. But every pressure, every delay, every uncomfortable silence had a purpose larger than your pain. I was shaping you not just to endure, but to carry something far greater than convenience. I wasn't building a life of comfort. I was forming a foundation that wouldn't crumble under the weight of glory. What's on the way isn't light. It's holy, it's weighty, and it requires someone who won't collapse, I couldn't place this magnitude on shoulders still fragile with fear. I needed you to be tempered, seasoned, forged. This wasn't cruelty, this was covenant. I was protecting what I planned to place in your hands. I love you too much to let you receive something that would break you because you weren't built to hold it yet. So I let discomfort do its sacred work. You've grown in ways you didn't measure. You've developed a strength that didn't announce itself until pressure exposed it. The very things you thought were setbacks were actually the building blocks. You didn't recognize the construction because it looked like loss. But now, you're ready. Not perfect, but prepared. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You're positioned. And so, I can finally place upon you the next layer of purpose I've been waiting to release. This isn't a reward. It's a recognition that you are finally able to carry what once would have crushed you. I know there were moments you stood on the edge of surrender. Not the good kind, but the one born from exhaustion. The kind that says, I don't have anything left. You looked at the dream, the calling, and you whispered, maybe it wasn't meant to be. I heard you. I saw you carefully fold your expectations and tuck them away. But child, I never asked you to bury what I planted. The vision was never dead. It was undergoing a divine transformation. And now, without you striving, without you forcing doors, the very thing you laid down is returning. But not as it was. This time it bears my fingerprints. This time it carries my weight. This time, it's not hollow with human plans, but filled with a power you didn't have the first time. You're not seeing a repeat of a failed attempt. You're standing at the doorway of fulfillment. The waiting refined the dream, but it also remade you. You're no longer chasing validation. You've grown quiet enough inside to recognize when something carries my breath. And this child does. This knock is not just an opportunity, it's a confirmation. You don't have to open it in fear. It's real and it's holy. And I won't require you to fight to keep it like you did before. This time, peace will be your companion. Doors will respond not to your pushing, but to your obedience. This time, it will not slip through your fingers. This time it will remain, because it came from me. I know as you stand here, you've watched others run ahead. You've seen their timelines pass, their doors open, while you remain seated in the silence. You've questioned your own pace. But my child, hear me clearly. My timeline is not bound to comparison. I am not grading you on how quickly you arrive. I am looking at how deeply you trusted while you waited. You are not behind. You are not damaged. You haven't forfeited your place. You are standing in the exact space I prepared for you. You see the setbacks. I see the shaping. You remember the falls. I remember the rising. While you were convinced your past disqualified you, I was weaving redemption through every scar. You haven't missed me. I have been with you, patient, steady, unwavering. And today, I need you to release that lie, the one that says you've run out of time, that it's too late. The truth is, you're right on time for what I've designed. I don't rush perfection. The years you think were wasted were necessary. The healing had to take root. The wisdom had to be earned. And now, you're not just stepping into purpose. You're stepping in with maturity. You're not behind, you're seasoned. You're not too broken, you're refined. What looked like ruin is the evidence that my hand has never left you. You haven't missed it, you've arrived. Walk forward, not as someone trying to make up for lost time, but as someone who finally understands they were never late. They were just being prepared differently. That's why you didn't know what I was doing when those other doors closed so abruptly. You assumed you had failed. You stood in front of those sealed paths, convinced they were meant for you. But none of those refusals were accidents. Every single no was my hand covering you. Every denied opportunity was a wall I placed between you and a danger you couldn't detect. You saw stability, I saw a slow unraveling. You saw potential, I saw a spiritual drain waiting behind the smiles. You've cried over places I rescued you from. You mourned what I interrupted with my own hand. But I have never been reckless with your direction. I calculated every interruption. That wasn't rejection. That was my mercy. I don't push my children away. I shield them from what would have altered their destiny. The rejection you felt wasn't punishment. It was precision. I wasn't being harsh. I was being deeply intentional. You prayed for guidance, and I answered with obstruction. You asked for alignment, and I delivered closed routes. You didn't recognize my fingerprints at the time, but I was guiding every turn you thought was wasted. I rerouted you to keep your soul intact. Had I allowed everything you asked for, you would have settled in places that couldn't contain your growth. So yes, I said no. Yes, I closed it. Yes, I disrupted it. But not to take from you. It was to give you something better. This is not the story of missed chances. This is the story of miraculous redirection. And every place you thought you didn't belong was a setup for the exact place I'm now about to bring you. A place that won't demand you to shrink. You'll know it's me because this time it will fit without force. And that is why you must stop watching everyone else's journey. Stop measuring your pace by theirs, as if your worth is determined by how closely your path resembles someone else's. You were not created to replicate what's already been done. I breathed uniqueness into your design. Your calling isn't validated by resemblance. Your purpose isn't proven by imitation. I didn't raise you to echo voices. I raised you to release a sound. That comparison you've been entangled in, the one that quietly steals your peace, is a distraction. It's a counterfeit lens designed to distort your view, and I want you free from it. I've set you apart not to isolate you, but to entrust you with something sacred, something new. Something that can only be released through your obedience. You were never meant to blend in. That uneasiness you feel when trying to imitate others, that's your spirit rejecting what doesn't belong to you. Different doesn't mean disqualified. It means chosen. Pioneers don't walk in familiar patterns. They build bridges where there were none. They move by faith when visibility is low. And that's who you are. Your path may feel lonely at times, but you are not alone. I walk with pioneers. You've been asking me why your life doesn't look like theirs. And I'm telling you now, because I didn't write your story to match theirs. I authored you with precision, for a purpose specific to your voice, your hands, and your heart. Stop adjusting your direction to gain approval from those who can't see what I've shown you. Walk forward, not to compete, not to impress, but to pioneer. If you stop looking over your shoulder at what everyone else is doing and fix your gaze on what I've given you, you will start to see miracles that comparison could never produce. Because I bless the original. I breathe on the surrendered. You don't have to be like them. You were never supposed to be. You only have to be mine, Amen.